Hi, I'm Simon Hartley.
And I'm Helen Good Martin.
Welcome back to Pep Talks. Today we're joined by a very good friend of mine, Colonel Chris Gibson. He's, as I explained to you, Helen, he's the guy I describe as the man who beat Ebola. Chris led a team into West Africa, tasked to eradicate Ebola, and they were given an absolutely minimal chance of success, almost no margin for error. Chris, what were those challenges? What were the challenges locked up within that?
Well, I think in the preamble, you talked about the unknown unknowns, and I think we were in a state where it feels very similar in some way to where we are in the UK today, or on the global platform today, where we're faced with something which is causing us great anxiety and stress. And certainly for me, when I was given the task of leading the design, training, assurance and deployment of initially the military teams that were going out there to deliver first world care in the rigor of a West African jungle against a Cat 4 pathogen which had 90% plus fatality rate upon contact. There was much anxiety, not only from myself, but also for those, more importantly, that we were asking to step into the breach. So I think that was the biggest piece. So what do you do with that? That was the question. We were saying, okay, so what do we know? And let's reinforce success. So what we knew was we knew how to train. We just come out of Afghanistan within weeks of West Africa sparking up in 2014. And we knew how to align our people to deliver at the highest levels, and we knew how to assure. Infectious disease was way different than it was a space we never thought we'd ever get into. But we just took it as a challenge, and we went after what we were good at, and then we worked out where to get after the bits, the technical components. Then followed on from that.
Yeah.
So, all about reinforcing success for me was the key piece.
Yeah, really interestingly, I talk to people a lot about how you develop confidence. To build on what you do know and you can do is the first, pillar on which you build, the foundation on which you build. So yeah, I think it makes perfect sense to start with what you do know and you can do.
And I
reflect with the expertise you've got.
Yeah, I think I reflect into how that translates into business and into professional sports, such as the England team will never discuss where they got it wrong or where they were suboptimal, but they talk about what they got right and how they can make that better. And it sets the positive mind frame. So positive emotions, and reinforcing them were really key to setting the stall out and turning the unknown unknowns into known unknowns. What do we not know? What we do know is that we're really good at this. We're really good at training. We're really good at setting a team up. We're really good at understanding a problem and understanding where we can get after that problem. And so that's what we went after. We went after our strengths.
Yeah, brilliant. The other part of this challenge that I think will be really interesting for people to understand how you did this. You had a remote team, didn't you? You didn't spend a lot of time in West Africa with people. You were doing the vast majority, the bulk of this from the UK, weren't you?
Yeah. So we created a facsimile of the capability that we were sending out there in a set of warehouses in York, which is what we'd done for Iraq, which is what we'd done for Afghanistan. And so we knew we when I talk about we knew how to train, we created the environment. We created the environment as close to that which they were going to be going into. So the power of training, the power to withdraw, to train, to understand where to make improvement, to pressure test an organization, to see where those fractures appear, and then reinforce those or repair, really helped us and brought confidence. And I'm really passionate about, as you know, about these three components of an organization. The physical, the moral, and the conceptual. And for me, we knew we had physical we had right. We believed that we created the ergonomics and the equipment to deliver the highest level of care. We'd worked out what that looked like.
Yeah.
So once we worked that out, we understood that, you know, the ethics of what the highest level of care would be and wouldn't be. And that's really interesting conversations that are going on in health in the UK now. You know, about what's the highest level of care we can give, and do we have to have, you know, really challenging decisions to be made with regard to patients that come in the front door if this explodes.
Yeah.
So the conceptual component we worked really hard on. So the physical we got right, the conceptual we worked really hard on. So the drills and the method of operating, which was made really simple, and became a muscle move. So it was Aristotle that said that, you know, excellence isn't an act, it's a habit. And we repeated and we practiced and we drilled until people absolutely knew the muscle moves within that facility, to keep them safe and to understand what their left and right of arc was, so that they could work really clearly within that space. So conceptually we got that right. The bit that we had to get right was the moral component. And for businesses, I think that's absolutely right. How do we look after the moral component of our organization now? You know, certainly thinking back to West Africa and sending our people there, you know, it was a bit that we struggled with. But when we started to get it right, when we could show them that through training that their personal protective equipment would keep them safe, it allowed them to deliver the highest levels of care without concern that they themselves would become infected, because they knew morally that the organization had their back. And that I see that not being quite right in the hospitals I'm working within just now, but I think it equally translates into business as well. That if you get the moral component of your organization right, never mind the physical and the equipment that you're throwing, such as laptops and cars and phones, etc., and your sales techniques or your company strategy, if you don't get the moral bit right, it doesn't matter. They're not going to follow. So that was a big lesson for me.
And how do you, Chris, you know, the well-being of those staff then that are going into the front line, you know, how do you get that right? How do you remotely make sure they're in the best place to deliver?
You know, you have great leaders out there that are completely aligned to the wider organizational strategy. They understand the lines of communication, and I heard you talking briefly about communication. I think communication is massively important. And if you sit at the top of an organization, you know, the best litmus test of the efficiency of your communication strategy is find the most junior member of the organization and go and ask them. And if you don't hear your words back, it's not working.
Yeah.
So, you know, we work really hard on communication. And you know, you can have the greatest strategy, but if you don't communicate it well, nobody's going to buy it. You know, nobody's going to follow. So I think that was really important. I think that the other piece is that we use mission command in the military, and it translates so well into business, I think. And this is basically giving real freedom of movement to act within a set of rules. So you will give them the ends. So what does good look like? This is the desired end state of this plan, of this task, of this strategy, and you'll give them the means. So give them a budget or the physical capability to deliver it. But the way it's done is absolutely theirs to do. And I think that's really important. You give them real freedom. You get the best thinking through that philosophy, and that's what we did with our teams that went out there. You know, although it was really prescriptive, some of the drills, the leadership and how they went after the task, once they were there, was absolutely theirs. That was theirs to do. And it gives them real confidence that that they can use all of their talents and then don't feel suppressed.
Yeah, we were chatting earlier about when I delivered a conference back in 2018, and I was talking to lots of leaders who had led their teams into uncertainty. Lots of the people we're going to hear from later in the pep talks, people like Floyd, who's an SAS major, and Justin Redbarrow's team leader. I was asked at the end, what are those common themes that they all talked about? And I sort of conceptualized three. There was align, empower, and engage, and that you need all three. And we were chatting earlier about the importance of all of those three. You do genuinely need to align people. You need to help everybody understand what the direction is, what the end is, what we're looking for.
Yeah.
You need to empower them to be able to make those decisions and navigate their way to that end. And they need to be engaged. They need to know the why. And I think that comes right back into when you were talking about the sort of physical, conceptual, and moral. I think lots of businesses have got the physical bit at the moment. You know, everybody's got the laptops. They've got the kit, all the rest of it. They might be looking at cash resources and things like that. That's all part of, getting the resource bit right. Maybe they don't have a really clear strategy yet, so they're maybe missing a bit of the conceptual. But actually, the really key one here, like you said, the moral bit that lots of people may forget is just understanding that we're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
We're trying to do the right thing by you, the people, our customers, our clients, our suppliers. We're trying to do the right thing here.
Yeah. It's the narrative, getting the narrative right in this VUCA space. We talk about this a lot, Simon, don't we? This volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous space that we're in just now is so important. So if you can create the right narrative with vision, understanding, clarity, and allow that to adjust, because no plan that you create, especially in this space we're in, will always be 100% right. It won't survive contact. So as long as you can be agile enough to acknowledge that and then adjust your plan, you will maintain the right direction of travel.
Yeah.
So so there's lots of anxiety out there for people, for customers, for organizations, there's no doubt that people are struggling a little bit from that, which I've seen. But I've seen it before. As you may recall, I was given the task of being one of the leads with Rory Stewart when he was the Minister of Justice to sort the culture of violence out in the 10 most violent prisons in England. How do we get after that? How do we eat this elephant that is so big and so challenging? And it was exactly the same as the other things that we've done before. Is we go after what we know and what we're good at, and then we understand how to unpick it. And for me, again, the moral component of that organization was where we could make the biggest gains.
Yeah.
I think, Chris, though, the fear that we see, and okay, there are two incredible examples that you've been involved with, but the fear that we see is kind of, I mean, it's correct. We need to be respectful of this COVID-19 is certainly something we've never dealt with before. But how do you manage that fear and that will take over if we don't manage it?
Well, I think, it's really interesting, isn't it? As I reflect back on being at home this weekend and then seeing the news of everyone, perhaps not everyone, but a proportion of society who are not adhering to the advice because they think the advice doesn't apply to them, or they are in some way immune to this set of circumstances we find ourselves in. I think it's really interesting. For me, I think the society, this is a moment in history, and I'm not trying to glorify this in any way, but it's a moment in history where I think we'll sit and chat with our grandchildren about what we did in this space and time, and we should be really proud, whether that's of the actions that we took. And I think if that is how we lead our teams remotely and give them the best information that we can, and we assure them that we are doing everything we can to keep them in their jobs, and that the company really values the input that they're doing. I think also we'll look back in a society about how we helped and what we did. That little act that could be done for all the vulnerable people in our community by getting a little bit shopping for them or whatever. So for me, it's a really pivotal point in where we are, and people should really do the right thing as far as I'm concerned. I'm not trying to get on a soapbox here, but I'm really passionate about, actually, this is really, really serious. And if we don't do what the guidelines tell us to do, it could be a mess.
Yeah.
And the longer that we don't adhere to it, the longer we're going to be in this position, because this illness will continue. Spanish flu, which came after the First World War, took 5 years to recover from. 5 years to recover from for businesses may be irretrievable.
Yeah. Yeah. The other part that we were chatting about earlier, how do you take on those mammoth challenges, the ones that most people would be completely daunted by? Interesting, you used a little phrase, don't get sucked into the fight. You've got to be able to step back. You've got to be able to get yourself some strategic headspace.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah. I mean, I think, it's a classic component of leading teams is that, don't get too close to it. Allow yourself that strategic space to be able to look at the next thing coming and have that helicopter view of what's going on, so you can see where the benefits can be given. If you don't create the space, you'll always be stuck in the current fight. And I know I'm using a lot of military terminology, but they all translate into business. Your team should be looking at where you are now, absolutely, but you should have some planning going on. How do we get back to normal business?
Yeah.
Because it's going to happen. It will happen that this will die out, and your organization needs to get back as quickly as possible to delivering business as usual. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, you and I were chatting earlier about, in my view, lots of people are still sort of in a bit of firefighting mode. But eventually we've got to flip our minds forward to how do we get ourselves in pole position, because the world will open back up again. How do we make sure we're in the right place at the right time and we can get ourselves in pole position so that when the doors do open, we can actually get back not only into normal business, but potentially start looking for ways to emerge stronger from this. I don't see many people thinking that way at the moment. Hopefully in the next few weeks it'll start to turn.
I think as a society, as business leaders, I think we're in the shock of capture and trying to understand what the new world looks like for us. And I think that will take up 90% of people's bandwidth, trying to work out how to create an edge within this new mechanism of working. And where is the continuum going currently? Are we going to be suppressed further by government ruling with regard to our business? And what does that mean for us? And for me, if I was looking at how to manage a business, I would be trying to say, okay, where's this going and what can we do to still be active in our space, given what the next steps may be. But there's no doubt that this curve will bend and we will come out of it. And as you've put the brakes on or put the restrictions in on your teams, you've got to have a mechanism of unlocking that in a continuum so that you get back to that business as usual as well. So that planning component is really important. For me, I would look at a small team on current operations, but certainly one or two people if you do have the flexibility to look at future as well.
Yeah,
I think that's really important, because you don't want to smack into it to say, right, restrictions are off, how do we get back? You should already have that plan in place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's the energy drive that we'll need to do that, having that bank of energy that we need to kind of keep popped up during this time when it is fearful, and I think that's exactly what you're saying there, that we need to kind of bank that now and be ready. And
no, absolutely. Your people, I'm sure, are there's two things probably going on just now. You've got this anxiety of what does the future look like for us, from their personal well-being, financial, all of those bits that are drivers to make them go to work. And then the second bit is, okay, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
And that's the space that you can be at the best. That's where you can get the best out of your people, because there's a will to help. And if you can create the vision and the direction of travel for that, you'll get great products, you'll get great innovation, because some people have some amazing ideas of how to take your business forward in this space of restriction.
Fantastic. Chris, thank you very, very much. Are you happy to pick up some questions as they come through via LinkedIn and
of course,
the social media channels? Guys, leave your questions in the comments in LinkedIn or on the YouTube channel, and we'll pick those up as we go. For now, thank you very, very much, Chris Gibson. Thank you, Helen. And tune in for the next episode of Pep Talks.
Thank you.